The neon lights flicker and buzz over empty highways. Engines hum, tires crunch gravel, and the night stretches endlessly. Roadside motels should feel safe, temporary havens for travelers. But some have secrets hidden behind their peeling walls. Guests check in, the receptionist smiles, and doors close behind them. By morning, rooms are empty. Some never leave. Some leave changed. And some leave only whispers behind. Across the United States, travelers report sudden screams, vanishing guests, and shadowed figures in motel hallways. Some are seen on security cameras long after they checked out. Some are never seen at all. Tonight, we journey into 20 haunted roadside motels where unexplained deaths occurred, rooms are cursed, and the past lingers like a stifling fog. If you heard footsteps approaching your room, a whisper calling your name, or a door slamming by itself at midnight, would you lock yourself in, or step out to investigate the shadows? The neon lights flicker and buzz over empty highways. Engines hum, tires crunch gravel, and the night stretches endlessly. Roadside motels should feel safe, temporary havens for travelers. But some have secrets hidden behind their peeling walls. Guests check in, the receptionist smiles, and doors close behind them. By morning, rooms are empty. Some never leave. Some leave changed. And some leave only whispers behind. Across the United States, travelers report sudden screams, vanishing guests, and shadowed figures in motel hallways. Some are seen on security cameras long after they checked out. Some are never seen at all. Tonight, we journey into 20 haunted roadside motels where unexplained deaths occurred, rooms are cursed, and the past lingers like a stifling fog. If you heard footsteps approaching your room, a whisper calling your name, or a door slamming by itself at midnight, would you lock yourself in? Or step out to investigate the shadows? The Red Lantern Motel sits at the edge of a forgotten highway. Its neon sign burns a sickly red, flickering intermittently against the darkened sky. The light spills unevenly across cracked asphalt and overgrown grass, casting long shadows that shift with the wind. The building itself is low, its paint peeling, windows dimmed with age and neglect. Despite its isolation, it draws attention in a way that feels deliberate, as if it waits for visitors. Room 6 is the heart of the motel's reputation. Guests who stay there describe an immediate sense of wrongness the moment they step inside. The door closes with a heavier sound than expected. The air is colder. The lights dim slightly, though the bulbs have not failed. And in the far corner, a figure appears. She is a woman, always the same. Guests report that she does not blink, does not breathe audibly, and does not shift her posture. She is present, yet separate from the ordinary physics of the space. Her gaze is unsettling, absorbing attention without acknowledgement, and it carries an intensity that seems impossible for any human. Some visitors attempt conversation, only to find their words ignored. When looked at directly, she seems aware but unresponsive, a presence that watches without interaction. Moving closer, the figure remains still, her position unchanged, yet the feeling of being observed grows stronger. Over the years, the stories have multiplied. Several visitors never returned from room 6. Their belongings remain behind, untouched, as if frozen in time. Luggage sits open, clothes folded or scattered mid-motion. Personal items, wallets, and notebooks lie where they were left, marking the absence with a quiet, tangible reminder. The hallway leading to room 6 carries its own weight. The carpet seems to absorb sound, footsteps muffled, as if the corridor itself anticipates intrusion. Shadows gather unnaturally along the walls. The air smells faintly metallic, tangy with a hint of something long decayed. Doors to neighboring rooms feel heavier, tighter in their frames, but only near room 6 does the sensation of presence intensify. Guests report an odd perception of time. Minutes stretch and compress unpredictably. Clocks are often inaccurate, spinning forward or backward. Watches fail to function properly. A short visit may feel like hours, or hours vanish in a moment, leaving no memory of elapsed time. The room seems to resist measurement, enforcing its own rhythm. Lights in room 6 sometimes flicker in patterns unrelated to the fixtures. Shadows shift independently of any object. A curtain moves though no breeze passes through the window. Mirrors reflect glimpses of the woman even when she is positioned outside the field of reflection. These subtle disturbances heighten the sense that ordinary laws of reality are suspended here. Many who stay overnight leave uneasy. They report feeling watched even when alone, not only in the room but in the building and parking lot. The red glow of the neon sign casts long, distorted shapes across the walls and floors. And shapes can appear where none should exist. Observers describe brief, untraceable movements in peripheral vision. Shadows that vanish when confronted. The motel's history contributes to its aura. Staff who have been present for decades recall incidents that defy explanation. Guests checking out early report sudden chills, whispering voices, and objects moving subtly without contact. Attempts to photograph or record the room often fail, producing blank frames or distorted sound. Equipment stops working inexplicably. Despite warnings, visitors are drawn to the Red Lantern Motel, particularly room 6. Curiosity, disbelief, or the strange pull of the building itself seems to draw people in. Once inside, they experience sensations difficult to convey. The room does not threaten overtly, yet the atmosphere is oppressive, heavy, and insistent. Presence is constant. Observation is absolute. Some theorize that the woman embodies a fragment of past events, tied to a tragedy or ritual unknown. Others suggest the space itself has become sentient, shaping perception and influencing reality within its bounds. What is clear is that room 6 continues to resist explanation, defying understanding while remaining unmistakably real. The neon sign continues to pulse in the night, a beacon of caution and curiosity. Its red light bleeds across the surrounding landscape, casting the motel in an eerie, surreal glow. The building waits, still and patient, for the next visitor to cross the threshold into room 6. The Red Lantern Motel endures, a place where ordinary rules of space, time, and observation bend. Room 6 remains the epicenter of mystery. Shadows kneel, walls breathe, and the woman stands silently in the corner. Belongings remain, clocks fail, and the experience continues to unsettle all who enter. The presence lingers, quiet but persistent, waiting for the next traveler to cross the threshold, for the neon red glow to signal entry into a space that refuses to be forgotten. At night, the red lantern burns. Room 6 waits. The woman watches, and the world outside feels suspended. Every step, every sound, every breath within the room confirms that some places are beyond explanation. And some presences never leave. Foggy Pines Inn sits at the edge of a forest where mist rises without warning. And settles thickly over the parking lot. At night, the fog becomes almost unnatural. A dense curtain that obscures lights and blurs the familiar shapes of vehicles and walkways. It rolls and shifts, moving with a slow, deliberate pace as though alive. Guests who arrive after dark often notice it first. Headlights cut narrow paths through the haze, but the edges vanish quickly. The air is cold and damp, carrying a faint scent of pine and something older, earthy and unsettling. Footsteps crunch on gravel and then fade almost immediately, swallowed by the mist before reaching the inn's entrance. Inside, the hallways stretch longer than expected. Floors creak softly under careful steps, amplifying every movement. Guests report hearing echoes of footsteps when no one else is present, sounds that come from rooms they know to be empty. The repetition is unnerving, like the building itself is breathing or moving with them. Doors that should be silent shift subtly in their frames. Sometimes a chill passes over a room without any open window or draft. It is enough to make visitors pause, sensing that the inn exists on a plane slightly askew from their expectations. The most persistent phenomenon is laughter. Guests and staff alike describe the sound of children laughing in abandoned rooms. It is bright and fleeting, echoing off walls long unused. The source cannot be located. The sound moves from room to room, sometimes following footsteps, sometimes appearing far ahead. Guests feel compelled to investigate, only to find empty spaces and cold floors. Furniture seems untouched yet misplaced. Chairs or small tables appear in locations where they were not before, though nothing is visibly moved. Objects are found in unusual arrangements, adding to the sense that the inn itself maintains a quiet presence, aware of those moving through its spaces. The fog outside interacts strangely with the inn's windows. Light from hallways or exterior lamps refracts in patterns that suggest movement, yet nothing is there. Shadows stretch and twist across walls in ways that make familiar corridors feel unfamiliar. Guests describe the sensation of being watched even when alone, a constant pressure that never fully dissipates. Some visitors feel sudden cold touches along the skin, fleeting but unmistakable. They occur without contact, a brush against an arm or shoulder that leaves the body reacting before the mind can rationalize it. The sensations are often accompanied by a faint whispering, too soft to discern but enough to make attention sharpen and the heart quicken. At the center of the inn, a long lobby with high ceilings becomes a focal point for these experiences. Chandeliers cast pools of light that barely illuminate corners. Laughter carries and refracts in impossible ways. The fog sometimes creeps inside through cracks near doors, lingering on the floor like a thin, moving carpet. Explorers and overnight guests alike have tried to document these phenomena. Cameras capture distorted images, brief streaks of light or shadow that vanish when examined closely. Audio recorders catch faint static or occasional fragments of laughter, but clarity is elusive. The inn resists easy measurement, maintaining an atmosphere that is perceptible rather than tangible. Hallways and staircases appear longer at night than during the day. Rooms shift subtly when revisited. A guest may pass the same corridor twice and find that doors are not where they were before, or that a previously empty room now contains an object. Movement through the inn requires caution, attention, and sometimes hesitation. Despite the eerie phenomena, the inn maintains a sense of order. Staff move through their duties, aware of reports but experienced enough to continue routines. The building itself does not attack or threaten. Instead, it exists as a persistent observer, shaping perception and subtly guiding movement. Visitors report that the longer they remain inside, the stronger the sensation of being watched becomes. Even when sitting still in a room, eyes feel drawn to corners, shadows, and doorways. The laughter may echo from a distance, drawing attention without direction. Movement through the inn requires constant awareness, a measured pace, and careful observation. The combination of fog, architecture, and the unexplained creates a unique environment. The mist outside blurs boundaries, making windows and walls seem permeable. Light and shadow interact unpredictably. Sound behaves strangely, echoing and refracting to make the building feel alive. Guests report feeling a subtle intelligence guiding the experiences, as if the inn itself is attuned to their presence. When morning arrives, the fog often lifts suddenly. The hallways feel ordinary, the sounds of footsteps and distant voices return to normal. Guests may question their own perceptions, recalling fragments of laughter or strange chills. Yet the memory lingers, vivid and persistent. The inn's presence remains, even when everything appears mundane. Foggy pines and continues its nightly existence, welcoming visitors who enter willingly or by chance. Most nights are quiet, but certain crossings of darkness bring the fog, the echoes, and the laughter to life. The inn maintains its rhythm, observing without hostility, engaging without explanation, offering an experience that is immersive, subtle, and unforgettable. Those who leave carry the sensations with them. Footsteps echo in memory. Laughter is remembered even in silence. Shadows and fog linger in thought. The inn does not need to follow, it exists in recollection as vividly as it does in presence. Foggy Pines remains a place where perception is challenged, where the ordinary becomes slightly unreal, and where every guest becomes aware of movement, sound, and attention that cannot be fully explained. Where every guest becomes aware of movement, sound, and attention that cannot be fully explained. It is a village of mystery, a forested inn of whispers, fog, and shadows that draw the living into the echoes of the past. By day, it appears ordinary. Cars pull into the gravel lot. Neon signs flicker faintly. Windows reflect sunlight, and the building looks worn but welcoming. Travelers stop for rest, for food, for a brief pause on long journeys. As evening falls, shadows stretch across the lot. The neon sign pulses intermittently. The highway hum grows quieter as vehicles pass farther away. The motel seems to observe arrivals, its windows catching movement inside without revealing anything of its own. Those who stay sense it immediately, a presence more in awareness than sight. Not through cameras or windows, but through the sense of being monitored. Rooms that appear ordinary carry a tension that is difficult to describe. Lights dim more slowly than expected. Sounds of plumbing or distant traffic echo strangely. The walls seem closer, as if attentive to each movement. At night, experiences grow more pronounced. Travelers report sensations that defy explanation. Hands brushing against arms or shoulders while asleep, light pressure on legs, small touches that awaken the mind even if the body does not fully register motion. There is no one visible, no shadow crossing the room, yet the feeling persists. Some guests awaken with marks on their skin. Scratches across arms, shoulders, or backs, faint but definite. No pets, no faulty furniture, no apparent cause. Objects in the room remain undisturbed. The hallway carries its own weight. Yet travelers swear they hear pacing outside their doors. Doors across the corridor seem to shift slightly, opening or closing with a whisper of motion that leaves no draft. Lights flicker briefly, casting shadows that appear to lean, then return to normal. Guests describe a layered awareness. They feel the motel observing not only their movement but their presence, their breath, their rhythm of sleep. There is a tension that is calm yet persistent, a pressure that is perceptible without explanation. It is not aggressive, yet it is undeniable. The phenomenon is not limited to one room. Reports come from multiple floors, different sections of the building, often on consecutive nights. Some travelers hear footsteps pacing slowly above or below their room, echoing in patterns too deliberate for coincidence. Doors that were closed return slightly ajar in the morning. Bed covers are shifted minimally, enough to suggest subtle interference. Guests have tried to document the experience. Cameras and recording devices often capture nothing unusual. Some recordings show faint blurs, moving shadows at the edge of frames, subtle reflections that are gone upon closer inspection. Even instruments that measure motion or temperature fluctuate inexplicably, rising or falling without cause. The motel's isolation amplifies perception. With few outside distractions, every sound and movement becomes heightened. The quiet stretches between rooms, halls, and parking lot, giving weight to even the faintest sensation. The highway beyond seems distant, muffled, leaving only the building, its rooms, and the watchers within. Those who sleep there describe a paradox. The space feels both intimate and expansive. The walls contain, yet they seem to extend awareness beyond the room itself. The bed is small, the room finite, yet attention feels drawn to corners, to ceiling, to doorways, as if the motel observes the entirety of presence within it. Repetition is common. Travelers returning for subsequent stays often report similar experiences. Touches at night, unexplained marks, shadows moving at the periphery of vision. Even those skeptical on first visit acknowledge the persistence. Some leave brief notes or leave doors slightly open, curious if the effect changes, yet it remains consistent. The motel's exterior contributes to its aura. Faded paint, dim signage, and sparse lighting create a sense of separation from the world. Surrounding fields absorb sound and reflect darkness. The highway hum recedes at night, leaving the building standing in quiet isolation. Despite the unease, people continue to arrive. Drivers stopping for sleep, travelers seeking rest, or explorers drawn by the reputation of the place. Each enters with ordinary expectations, yet each experiences the same pattern of observation, touch, and subtle interaction with the space itself. Even once guests depart, memories linger. Marks on skin fade, but the sensation remains vivid. Recollection of pressure, of movement, of footsteps in empty hallways, returns unbidden. Travelers speak cautiously, aware that retelling may invite skepticism, yet the experience is undeniable. Highway Haven Motel endures. It continues to receive travelers on the isolated highway, its rooms warm and furnished, its doors intact. Fires burn faintly in the hearths. Beds remain made, yet the air carries attention, awareness, subtle movement. The building maintains its routine while interacting with those who enter in ways that cannot be fully measured. Guests leave altered. Not physically harmed, not overtly threatened, but aware that the motel is not simply a building. It observes, interacts, and leaves traces that are perceptible yet mysterious. Travelers carry the memory of touch, of marks, of being watched, and they recount it quietly, often in whispers. Highway Haven stands apart. A place of rest and observation, ordinary by day, attentive by night, a structure that engages subtly with every presence, holding its secrets just beyond the edge of understanding. The highway stretches on, yet those who stay within the motel's walls know they have entered something alive in stillness, patient, and impossible to ignore. Crestview Lodge sits at the top of a forested hill, its stone and timber frame overlooking winding roads and dense trees. By day, the lodge appears welcoming. Guests arrive with suitcases and excitement, expecting comfort and solitude. But as evening approaches, the building itself begins to change. Even on nights without wind or storm, the lodge shakes subtly. Floorboards vibrate, walls hum with energy, and chandeliers swing slightly. The movement is not enough to topple anything, but it is noticeable to those inside. Guests awake briefly, startled, glance at the ceiling, and hear nothing outside. No wind. No vehicles. The vibration seems to come from the building itself, as though it breathes or shifts independently. Mirrors throughout the lodge hold strange reflections. In dim light, guests report seeing figures behind them, fleeting and unclear. Shapes appear briefly, out of focus and undefined, vanishing when the observer turns. Sometimes these reflections are of people standing still, sometimes moving silently, always present but never acknowledged by the world beyond the glass. Those who glimpse them describe a sensation of being observed, a pressure that lingers long after the image disappears. Staff know the stories and speak cautiously. They admit that many rooms report the phenomena, but only certain areas are avoided completely. Room 12, on the upper floor, is never rented after sunset. The manager explains it politely, offering alternative accommodations. But no one is allowed to stay there once darkness falls. Guests sense an unspoken warning. The door is not locked. It is simply left empty, its presence enough to unsettle those who pass by. The lodge's history contributes to its atmosphere. Built decades ago, Crestview has hosted travelers seeking respite and privacy. Over the years, reports of strange occurrences increased, often dismissed by authorities and scholars. Yet patterns emerge in guest testimony. The shaking, the mirrors, the refusal to enter room 12 after dark are consistent, spanning generations. Guests notice minor details first: a picture frame tilted, a drawer slightly open, footsteps that seem to echo unnaturally. Then, as night deepens, the more profound phenomena appear. The vibration grows, mirrors reveal movement, and unease settles in the chest. People describe a heavy silence that fills the hallways, punctuated only by small, inexplicable sounds. Attempts to record the events produce limited results. Cameras capture nothing unusual, yet the sensations remain vivid for those present. Audio devices pick up ordinary sounds, but cannot replicate the tremors felt underfoot. Those staying overnight describe memories that feel as real as physical objects, yet leave no trace outside their recollection. Many guests find themselves drawn into quiet observation. They walk the halls slowly, noting the behavior of shadows and reflections. Doors creak when unopened. Windows occasionally fog from within, though no one is inside. Temperature shifts, subtle and uneven, follow certain patterns, yet defy explanation. Staff approach the phenomena with a mixture of respect and caution. Housekeeping avoids room 12 entirely after sunset. And night staff report feeling a presence near certain mirrors. They describe an awareness in the air, like the lodge itself anticipates movement. Routine maintenance continues, but anomalies are left undisturbed. They understand that interference might provoke more than curiosity. Guests also report sensory anomalies. The smell of old wood and faint smoke sometimes intensifies without reason. A chill passes through rooms even when heaters run. Small objects move slightly, often returning to their original positions. Despite the unsettling experiences, many return to Crestview Lodge. There is an allure in the unknown, a fascination with the persistent mystery. People come seeking quiet, solitude, or adventure, drawn by the lodge's reputation. They speak of it afterward with awe, noting the mix of fear, curiosity, and wonder. Evening rituals amplify the sensation. The lodge grows darker than expected. Shadows stretching beyond corners, hallways extending visually. Sounds of creaking floors and distant footsteps echo. Mirrors multiply these effects, reflecting shapes that vanish upon closer inspection. The effect is cumulative, layering tension over the hours. For those brave enough to stay overnight in allowed rooms, the experience is immersive. Sleep is restless. Dreams feel intertwined with the loggia's environment. Guests awaken with a heightened awareness of movement, light, and sound. As though the building itself has shared a secret. Crestview Lodge persists, enduring decades of stories and quiet mystery. The building shakes, mirrors reflect what is unseen, and room 12 remains closed after sunset. The lodge maintains its normal function during the day, hosting travelers and visitors. At night, however, it is alive in ways that cannot be measured, a structure filled with history, presence, and unspoken rules. Visitors leave carrying impressions. They describe a lodge that exists simultaneously as shelter and enigma, comforting and unsettling. They recall tremors underfoot, reflections at the periphery of vision, and the weight of silence. The experience lingers, shaping memory long after the journey ends. Crestview Lodge continues to welcome those seeking respite, yet it preserves its secrets vigilantly. The building stands firm, the corridors echo, and the mirrors hold their reflections. Room 12 remains unoccupied after dark, a symbol of the loggia's unseen guardians. And each night, as darkness settles over the hilltop, the lodge awakens in subtle, indefinable ways, reminding all who enter that it exists not only in space, but in observation, memory, and the quiet persistence of the unknown. The Silver Oak Motel sits just off a quiet highway, its neon sign flickering in uneven bursts. By day, it looks ordinary, with cars parked in neat rows and rooms that promise comfort and privacy. The paint is faded, the pavement cracked, yet it offers the illusion of normalcy. Travelers check in, go to their rooms, and settle in for the night without thought. But after midnight, the motel changes. Windows rattle with unseen winds. The sound is subtle at first, a gentle tapping that could be mistaken for a storm or passing truck. Then it grows more persistent, shaking glass and frames as if something outside or inside is moving with purpose. Guests awake to the vibrations, listening to the pattern of disturbance without finding its source. Some have reported seeing pale faces peering out from walls. Not through windows or doors, but embedded in the plaster, in corners of rooms, and behind curtains that hang too stiffly to be ordinary. These faces are faint, almost translucent, visible only when light catches them at the right angle. They do not move, yet their gaze follows silently, pressing into the mind of anyone who notices. Floorboards creak under invisible weight. Doors shift on their hinges with no wind. Soft thumping echoes from the walls, rising and falling like footsteps pacing slowly in hidden corridors. Each noise carries a tension that suggests awareness, a presence that is attentive but elusive. By early morning, the atmosphere changes again. Soft weeping begins, distant and faint at first, like the murmur of a river under a bridge. It grows gradually, expanding through the hallways and rooms, reaching a volume that presses against the ears. The sound is sorrowful, patient, and repetitive. No one sees a person producing it, yet it is undeniable, tangible in the quiet of the night. Even when alone in rooms, the sensation persists. A glance toward a mirror or the corner of a ceiling brings the faint impression of movement. Shadows seem to shift more deliberately than natural light allows. Curtains sway without breeze, and the floor beneath the bed creaks just slightly as if bearing weight. The motel's interior carries memory. Wallpaper peels in thin strips, revealing older layers beneath. Carpets hold impressions of footsteps that do not belong to any recent occupant. Rooms are furnished normally, yet there is a sense that the walls remember lives that passed through long ago. That memory presses subtly into the present. In some rooms, objects are disturbed. Cups tilted, chairs not aligned with the table, blankets slightly rumpled. Nothing is destroyed or broken. Everything appears deliberate, as if the environment itself is attempting to communicate through movement rather than speech. Lights are unreliable. Ceiling fixtures flicker without electrical fault. Hallway bulbs pulse briefly, casting sharp shadows that stretch along walls and floors. These shadows seem to pause longer than they should, lingering, as if testing observation. The motel's exterior contributes to the effect. The parking lot is surrounded by overgrown trees and shrubs that shiver with unseen motion. The wind may not move, yet branches sway as if breathing. Reflections in glass doors distort the light, creating impressions of figures that are never present on inspection. Guests who attempt to leave early describe unease in the corridors. Even daylight does not fully dispel it. The quiet of morning brings no relief from the sensations built up overnight. Some speak of hearing the final echo of weeping from rooms they have vacated, fading only after crossing the threshold to the highway. Staff are aware of the atmosphere. Housekeeping crews and night clerks report objects appearing slightly moved when rooms are checked. Equipment shows no signs of malfunction, yet the patterns repeat. They describe being watched from empty rooms, and shadows that are sharper in the periphery than in direct sight. Silver Oak Motel endures as a place suspended between ordinary life and lingering memory. Windows continue to rattle. Faces press against walls. Footsteps echo. The weeping rises in early hours, filling hallways with sound that seems to belong both to the past and the present. Travelers leave with impressions that are difficult to describe, carrying with them the sense that the motel is alive in ways beyond understanding. The building waits quietly for the next visitor. Lights hum, doors close, and rooms remain prepared. Yet beneath the normal appearance, the atmosphere persists. Time slows, sound carries further, and the boundary between presence and absence is thin. Guests who remain awake feel it most sharply, aware of movement behind walls, of eyes that do not blink, and of sorrow that continues its steady rhythm until dawn. The motel is ordinary in form. It offers rooms, beds, and corridors. Yet it holds memory, observation, and lingering traces of lives that are no longer present. The experience is subtle, atmospheric, and persistent, leaving a mark that follows travelers long after the last key is returned. Silver Oak Motel stands as a testament to absence felt as presence. Windows rattle, faces appear, and soft weeping rises each morning. It is a place where ordinary travel meets the inexplicable, where the night carries echoes of the unseen, and where visitors cannot help but sense that the motel itself watches, remembers, and waits. The moonlit road motel sits quietly along a deserted stretch of highway. Its neon sign glows faintly in the darkness, casting pale light across empty parking spaces. The building is long and low, its corridors stretching in repeating patterns that seem to extend farther than they should. At night, the air grows colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves are holding something inside. Inside, the corridors are unnerving in their stillness. The lights flicker intermittently, bright one moment and dim the next, creating shadows that twist along the walls. The effect is subtle at first, but with every passing minute, the movement of light seems purposeful, tracing patterns across doors and floors as if marking spaces for unseen visitors. Guests report hearing doors open and close repeatedly in the empty halls. The sound comes sharply in the silence, echoing down the corridor before fading. When investigated, every door is closed, locks intact. No drafts, no evidence of movement, nothing to explain the rhythm of motion. Yet the sound persists, coming and going in irregular patterns, often in sequence as if someone or something is pacing the hallways. Figures appear at the ends of corridors. Their posture is human, upright and still. Observers often see only a silhouette, a presence that suggests awareness, yet they do not move toward anyone. When approached, the figures vanish. The space they occupied is empty, undisturbed, yet their absence leaves a lingering sensation, as if they had never been fully corporeal. The motel seems to resist explanation. Floor patterns and carpeting repeat in disorienting ways, making it difficult to navigate the corridors. Hallways that should lead to one room often loop back to another. The repetition creates a sense of endlessness, a maze that shifts subtly with each step. Time behaves strangely within the moonlit road motel. Clocks tick inconsistently, sometimes slowing, sometimes skipping intervals. Guests report periods of missing time, arriving at the end of a corridor expecting only moments to have passed, only to find hours unaccounted for. Watches and phones lose track, devices failing or freezing, further disorienting anyone inside. Some visitors have sensed presence beyond visual confirmation. A faint brush against the shoulder. A whisper of movement behind them. The feeling of being watched is pervasive, even when the corridors are empty and footsteps are solitary. A combination of flickering lights, repeating sounds, and unaccountable movement generates tension. A constant awareness that the motel is alive in a way that transcends ordinary experience. Objects occasionally move without explanation. Chairs shift slightly, papers slide across tables, and items left in rooms appear displaced when guests return. The walls themselves seem to absorb sound, muting conversation and amplifying silence in ways that feel deliberate. The motel's atmosphere is reinforced by the contrast of light and shadow. Even in rooms, corners appear darker than they should, forming shapes that linger in peripheral vision. Hallways extend unnaturally, seeming longer when traversed than measured. The effect is disorienting yet magnetic, compelling visitors to explore despite the growing sense of unease. Staff rarely comment on the phenomena. Long-term employees treat it as ordinary, part of the building's character. They advise caution after dark and suggest minimal movement in corridors late at night. Their silence adds to the mystery, lending weight to reports from guests who have experienced the unsettling occurrences firsthand. Some guests have described auditory anomalies beyond doors opening and closing. Footsteps echo along empty halls, soft and deliberate, following them through multiple corridors before fading. Occasionally, voices are heard, fragmented and indistinct, appearing to come from beyond walls or from spaces between rooms. No identifiable source is ever found, yet the sensation of interaction persists, intensifying the feeling that the motel itself is aware of those within it. The motel's design amplifies the experience. Repeating architectural patterns, long corridors, uniform lighting fixtures, and identical doors create ambiguity. It is difficult to distinguish one area from another, heightening disorientation and increasing susceptibility to the subtle presence of figures, shadows, and sounds. Guests who linger report increased tension in upper floors and at the ends of hallways. The figure silhouettes are more common there, the doors open and close with greater frequency, and time distortion appears more pronounced. Individuals often experience a compounding of sensory effects, flickering lights, disembodied footsteps, and missing time occurring simultaneously. Despite the unsettling phenomena, the moonlit road motel continues to operate. It provides accommodation, maintains schedules, and appears conventional by day. Yet at night, the building transforms, revealing its other character. A place where perception and reality intersect. Where time behaves irregularly. And where unseen presences move through hallways with deliberate intent. Visitors leave with a heightened awareness of space and time, carrying the memory of figures at the corridor's end. Carrying the memory of figures at the corridor's end, and the persistent flickering of light that casts shadows alive with motion. And the persistent flickering of light that casts shadows alive with motion. The experience is immersive, disorienting, and inescapable while within the building. While within the building, yet the motel retains an outwardly ordinary appearance. Concealing its nocturnal mysteries from the casual observer. Moonlit Road Motel endures as a space defined by subtle disturbance. Its hallways stretch endlessly, its lights flicker unpredictably, and its rooms harbor presences that appear and vanish. For those who enter after dark, the corridors are alive, the building aware, and the night prolonged. Figures wait at the ends of hallways, doors move without touch, and time bends. Figures wait at the ends of hallways, doors move without touch, and time bends. The motel persists, quiet and unyielding, a place where reality is fluid and the experience of being observed is unavoidable. The desert mirage sits alone on a long, winding stretch of desert road. By day, the sun beats relentlessly against its walls, heating the sand so that the horizon shimmers and the air seems to dance in waves of heat. By night, temperatures drop sharply, and the desert becomes a frozen expanse under a vast, dark sky. The isolation is total. There are no other lights for miles, and the wind carries the scent of sand and stone. Guests arrive seeking shelter or rest, often weary from long hours of travel across the empty landscape. During the day, the inn feels ordinary. The desert seems distant, as if separated by walls and windows. But night brings a change, subtle at first, then undeniable. Chains dragging in the sand are the first sign. The sound is distinct, metal sliding against the ground, echoing across the empty parking lot and shifting dunes. Others awaken to the sound during sleep, sudden and unrelenting, moving closer or receding without pattern. The dragging chains are accompanied by shadows. They appear at the edges of vision. Sometimes on the walls or just beyond the doorway. Guests describe waking to see these shadows standing silently beside their beds. Still and unblinking, as though watching. They do not move toward the bed. Yet the presence is immediate, pressing and inescapable. Temperature shifts accentuate the atmosphere. The desert outside seems to seep in, chilling the skin. Making every movement deliberate. The contrast between the heat of the day and the icy night intensifies awareness. Heightening every sound and shadow. Hallways in the inn grow unusually long at night. Doors seem farther apart. The familiar layout feels altered, corridors bending slightly. Creating a sensation of disorientation. Guests report that moving through the halls feels as if the inn itself is guiding or observing them. Each step measured by an unseen presence. Footsteps echo oddly. Guests moving quietly hear additional steps behind them. In perfect rhythm. Sometimes aligning with the dragging of chains outside. The combination suggests a connection between the interior and the desert beyond. Some explorers and overnight visitors attempt to document the phenomena. Cameras capture nothing but darkness or faint, indistinct shapes. Audio recorders pick up subtle metallic sounds or faint static, though the dragging chains are difficult to record clearly. Even experienced investigators note the inability to measure or reproduce the events reliably. Guests report sensations that are physical as well as psychological. Skin prickles as if brushed by air from invisible bodies. The pressure in the chest rises slightly, enough to demand awareness of surroundings. Heartbeats quicken without clear cause, leaving a lingering tension that persists until morning. Despite the presence of shadows and sounds, the inn does not appear hostile. It is observant rather than aggressive. Shadows watch without motion. Guests leave rooms and hallways intact. The inn allows passage, yet subtly directs experience. Shaping perception and encouraging caution. Some describe the chains as linking the inn to the desert, a reminder of the isolation beyond walls. The vast emptiness outside seems to amplify sounds and distort space. Sand shifts, wind moves, and night air whispers against windows. Within this environment, the mundane becomes strange, ordinary structures take on heightened significance. And perception is guided by suggestion and heightened awareness. Sleep is difficult for many. Those who fall asleep report vivid dreams, sometimes echoing the dragging chains, sometimes replaying the shapes of shadows at the bedside. Awakening does not always provide relief, the shadows may persist in peripheral vision, or the sense of presence continues throughout the room. Even morning brings residual effects. Sunlight illuminates the inn, yet the memory of night lingers. Guests notice subtle distortions in the hallways, shadows in corners, or temperature shifts near doors. Some leave with a heightened sensitivity to sound and movement, a caution that persists beyond the desert road. The desert mirage continues its nightly pattern. By day, it is ordinary, welcoming travelers seeking shelter and rest. By night, it becomes a place of subtle vigilance, where shadows and sound, temperature and perception, combine to create an environment that challenges understanding. Visitors who experience the inn report it consistently. Chains dragging in the sand, shadows at the bedside, hallways stretching unnaturally, and the chilling contrast between day and night. Each account reinforces the sense of the inn as a living, observant space. The inn's isolation is central to the phenomenon. Miles from other structures, surrounded by desert, it exists as a threshold. The vast, empty landscape interacts with human presence, amplifying ordinary sounds and movements into experiences that feel deliberate and directed. Guests who leave Desert Mirage Inn carry the memory. The dragging of chains and the standing shadows remain in thought, sometimes recurring unexpectedly. The deserta's heat and nighta's cold blend with perception, leaving a persistent awareness of the inna's presence, both physical and psychological. The Desert Mirage Inn endures as a place where isolation, environment, and perception converge. The desert itself seems to influence experience, guiding attention, heightening awareness, and reminding visitors that in this remote location, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, the familiar becomes uncertain, and the night is never entirely empty. The Broken Wheel Motel sits along a lonely stretch of highway, its faded sign swinging in the wind, paint peeling from the wooden frame. By day, it appears ordinary enough. Cars pull into the gravel lot. Travelers check in. The rooms are cheap, simple, and functional, offering the kind of rest that comes with basic necessity rather than comfort. Yet even in sunlight, the air feels heavy. Floorboards creak beneath each step. The walls seem to absorb sound, dampening conversations and echoes. Doors close with a weight that suggests they are more than ordinary wood. Visitors moving from the lobby to their rooms report a subtle change in atmosphere, a sensation of being observed without explanation. Guests often describe a persistent feeling of being watched. It is not a fleeting sense, but continuous. Eyes seem to follow movement along the hallways. Shadows gather in corners, deepening even when light is present. The sensation lingers in rooms, even after doors are closed, locking out the outside world. Some feel it at the desk, some in the parking lot, some even in the restroom. Staff are quiet, professional, but wary. They maintain polite distance and follow routine, yet they carry a seriousness in their eyes that suggests knowledge beyond ordinary duty. New arrivals are often warned subtly, without explanation, to exercise caution in certain rooms, especially room 3. Guests who ask are met with vague responses or polite refusals. Staff insist it should not be entered after dark. They do not elaborate, and yet the warning is firm. The tone is not playful, not teasing. It is a measured, deliberate caution. Those who ignore it report unusual experiences. Doors open slowly even when the handle is turned carefully. Lights flicker unexpectedly. Objects in the room shift between visits, never enough to alarm, yet sufficient to create disorientation. Visitors sometimes awaken in the night with the sense of presence in the room, feeling small movements across sheets or the brush of something unseen against their skin. The motel carries its own rhythm. Hallway lights dim and brighten without electrical cause. Floorboards creak in patterns that are not aligned with human movement. Air currents move subtly against closed doors and windows. Even the hum of appliances seems altered, carrying overtones of something almost deliberate. Guests frequently notice anomalies beyond room 3. Shadows stretch and bend in impossible ways. Mirrors reflect slightly altered images, never fully mirroring the room. Footsteps echo where no one walks. The longer visitors stay, the more pronounced these subtle interactions become, shaping a pervasive sense that the building is alive, attentive, and aware. Room 3, however, is different. It has an atmosphere that feels denser, heavier than the rest. Warmth and light are not comforting here. Sounds carry differently, echoing in patterns that suggest careful attention. Time seems altered. Minutes stretch. Movements of objects appear intentional, as if responding to observation. Visitors describe a charged stillness, a presence that waits rather than moves, observes rather than acts. Even during the day, the room is unsettling. Shadows linger longer than they should. Small noises occur without origin. Objects may shift minimally, but the change is noticeable enough to register as deliberate. Visitors report a persistent unease, a feeling that attention is directed toward them without release. At night, the room becomes unpredictable. Doors may lock and unlock by themselves. Sheets or blankets are disturbed while occupants are asleep. Small scratches sometimes appear, shallow and unexplained, on arms or shoulders. Electrical devices fluctuate, lights flicker, and sounds emerge in the quiet moments between breaths. Visitors who enter room 3 often awaken with gaps in memory. They recall fragments as shadows moving in peripheral vision, a subtle pressure against their back, the sensation of being approached, then withdrawn. When they check the surroundings, no one is present. No evidence explains the occurrences. Only the imprint remains in memory, vivid and disorienting. The corridors of the motel carry these echoes outward. Visitors in other rooms sometimes feel the atmosphere ripple. Sounds echo differently, shadows behave unusually, and the pervasive sense of watchfulness extends beyond room 3. Even the staff sense the shift, maintaining routines with careful attention, reinforcing the unspoken boundaries of the building. The motel's isolation amplifies everything. Located along a quiet highway with little passing traffic, the lack of external distraction makes the sensations sharper. Every sound, movement, and change within the structure becomes amplified. The building dominates perception, shaping how travelers experience time, space, and presence. Despite the warnings, guests continue to arrive. Some are drawn by curiosity, others by necessity. They check in, settle into rooms, and quickly realize that the atmosphere is more tangible than expected. Those who follow staff advice regarding room 3 often report only subtle disturbances, while those who ignore it encounter phenomena far more pronounced. The Broken Will Motel endures as a space suspended between ordinary lodging and something more perceptive. It functions normally in appearance, offering beds, showers, and rest. Yet it maintains an awareness, a subtle engagement with every presence within. Room 3 acts as the epicenter, concentrated and intense, while the rest of the building absorbs echoes and reflections of that energy. Guests leave altered. Not physically harmed, yet aware that the motel is not simply inert. It watches. It responds. It leaves traces on memory, skin, and perception. Travelers recount these experiences quietly, uncertain how to explain them to those who have not witnessed them. The Broken Will Motel remains on its isolated highway. Rooms are affordable, corridors stretch longer than expected, and staff continue their quiet caution. Travelers passing through may experience ordinary rest, or they may encounter the building's attentive presence, subtle movements, and unspoken warnings. Or they may encounter the building's attentive presence, subtle movements, and unspoken warnings. Room 3 waits after dark, a space of heightened awareness, and those who enter remember it long after they have left. Whispering Pines Motel sits at the edge of a dense forest, where towering pines stretch endlessly toward the sky. During the day, sunlight filters through the needles, casting shifting patterns across the parking lot and gravel paths. By night, shadows deepen, and the trees close in, forming corridors of darkness that seem to move with the wind. The air grows heavy, scented with pine resin and damp earth, carrying the weight of quiet that feels alive. Guests arrive expecting solitude and the calm of rural isolation. The motel offers modest accommodations, familiar rooms, and a rustic charm that makes it appear welcoming. Yet as evening falls, the surroundings change. The forest takes on a presence, as though it listens. Sounds that are ordinary by day become charged with meaning, footsteps amplified, rustling leaves resonant, and distant branches cracking with unnatural precision. Voices begin to carry through the trees. Are soft at first, almost indistinguishable from the wind. But they grow in clarity over time. Guests report hearing words, phrases, or names whispered on the breeze. The sounds seem directed, intimate, often close to the ear, yet when they turn, the space is empty. No one stands among the trees. No one calls out. The forest itself seems to speak. Figures appear to those who linger near the edge of the woods. Visitors describe seeing people in old-fashioned clothing, moving slowly along the paths and between the cabins. The garments suggest a different era, long past, and the movement is deliberate yet fleeting. Shapes vanish if approached, leaving only the memory of a figure framed by pine shadows. Some witnesses feel watched even after the figure disappears, the impression lingering in the mind as if the forest itself has marked them. The experience is unsettling, yet compelling. Guests find themselves drawn to the observation of small details, the way the branches shift, the sound of soft footfalls, the patterns of shadows across the gravel. The way the branches shift, the sound of soft footfalls, the patterns of shadows across the gravel. The sound of soft footfalls, the patterns of shadows across the gravel. Every element seems charged with purpose, orchestrated by something beyond the normal rhythms of nature. Some visitors report more than visual and auditory experiences. As they walk or stand alone, faint warnings are whispered in their ears. The words are unclear, fragmented, sometimes urgent, sometimes advisory. They carry a tone of caution, a suggestion to move carefully, to pay attention to the surroundings, to respect the boundaries of the place. Those who hear them feel a chill, a tightening of thought, a sudden awareness of vulnerability. Animals avoid the perimeter of the motel after dark. Birds cease calling, squirrels vanish from sight, and nocturnal creatures skirt the edges of the woods. The absence of wildlife reinforces the impression that the space is controlled, observed, or occupied by forces unseen. The motel itself appears unchanged during these phenomena. Rooms remain tidy, lights function, and the familiar sounds of pipes, heating, and distant traffic continue uninterrupted. Only the perimeter, the forested borders, and the gravel pathways become imbued with strangeness. The contrast makes the experience more intense, as ordinary and extraordinary coexist seamlessly. Staff speak cautiously about these occurrences. They acknowledge reports without confirming them, offering guidance to avoid lingering near the woods after nightfall. The warning is subtle but consistent. The forest is not empty. And some areas are best approached only in daylight. Long-term employees describe being aware of movement in peripheral vision. Shadows shifting where none should exist. And sounds that defy explanation. Guests describe repeated encounters, sometimes over consecutive nights. One evening, a figure might appear near the edge of the parking lot. The next, the whispered voice returns. Patterns emerge that feel deliberate yet unpredictable. The forest and its shadows establish a rhythm that exists outside conventional time, interacting with each visitor differently. The forest itself seems ancient, holding memory beyond the span of the motel's existence. Branches sway in patterns that suggest intent. Mist drifts through the pines selectively, thickening in some areas while leaving others clear. Mist drifts through the pines selectively, thickening in some areas while leaving others clear. Even when the moon is bright, the woods appear darker than expected, containing the unseen. Visitors often leave the motel with lasting impressions. The sense of being watched, the whispers, and the fleeting figures remain in memory, vivid and persistent. Some describe dreams that echo the experience, landscapes of dense pines and shadowed figures moving just beyond reach. The intensity of perception lingers, as if the forest continues to observe and communicate even in their absence. Whispering Pines Motel continues to operate, offering refuge and accommodation during daylight hours, while preserving its nocturnal mysteries. Guests are drawn to the intersection of ordinary comfort and extraordinary presence. Aware that each visit might encounter something beyond explanation. The forest waits patiently, shadows shifting, whispers carried through the pines. and figures appearing for those attuned enough to perceive them. The balance of light and dark, sound and silence, presence and absence, shapes the experience. Guests learn to walk carefully, to observe the smallest details, and to recognize the influence of the space around them. Every evening, the forest reasserts itself, calling attention to its enduring watch. Whispering Pines Motel exists as both destination and threshold. It offers familiarity and hospitality. Yet the boundaries with the forest remind all who enter that some spaces carry the memory of those who came before, and the presence of entities that may never be fully understood. Shadows shift, voices carry, figures move, and the pines watch silently, ensuring that the mysteries of the night endure for anyone willing to listen. Crossroads Rest stands alone where two quiet highways meet, a modest building with faded paint and a parking lot cracked from years of neglect. By day, the motel seems ordinary, welcoming travelers for a night's rest. Cars pull in, doors open, and guests disappear behind curtained windows. Yet there is a sense that this crossroads is more than a meeting of roads. It is a place where paths have ended, sometimes abruptly, for decades. The air inside the rooms carries a faint, persistent smell. Smoke from long-extinguished fires lingers in the corners. The scent of burning wood clings to carpets and drapes, subtle enough to be unnoticed at first but unmistakable once perceived. It hangs like a memory, a whisper of past evenings, warm but distant, as though the rooms remember people who are no longer there. Footsteps echo softly on hallways that seem longer than they should be. Guests arriving in the middle of the night notice the silence punctuated by these sounds. The boards beneath shoes produce a hollow resonance, amplified by the stillness. Doors open slightly on their own. Lights flicker briefly, casting long shadows that stretch across walls and floors, creating illusions of movement that vanish when looked at directly. Some visitors have felt more than sounds. Hands reaching from under the bed brush against ankles or the edges of clothing. The sensation is brief, surprising, and entirely unexplainable. Those who feel it instinctively step back or pull the covers closer, but nothing emerges. The rooms remain empty, yet the impression of contact lingers like static in the air. The motel seems attuned to the presence of its guests. Objects may appear slightly shifted when a room is re-entered. A chair may be angled differently, a blanket moved, or a door cracked wider than it was left. Nothing is ever destroyed or broken, merely altered in ways that suggest observation and subtle interaction. Outside lights flicker from passing vehicles, momentarily illuminating parking spaces and the surrounding highways. Shadows move independently of these light sources, forming lines that stretch across walls and into corners. Occasionally, glimpses of shapes appear outside, beyond the glass, standing just beyond perception, only to vanish when approached. The smell of smoke grows more pronounced at times. It is strongest when night deepens, when guests settle into beds and silence thickens. Sounds are layered and disorienting. Faint knocks tap on walls, soft creaks move through floors, and sometimes a low whisper drifts from a corner. Guests strain to locate the source, only to find emptiness. The effect is subtle, but enough to unsettle, giving the sense that the building itself listens, notices, and reacts. Travelers have disappeared at Crossroads Rest for decades. No one knows why. Cars that were never seen again. The building stands as a witness, a silent observer of paths that end here. Shadows deepen, and the boundaries between room and hallway blur. The air carries tension that is not tangible, yet felt by anyone present. Movement and peripheral vision, sounds that shift in direction, and impressions of figures in corners all create the sensation of a space partially occupied. As if the motel holds more than the living. Some visitors report fleeting glimpses. Faces appear in mirrors that should reflect only themselves. Shadows cross hallways with no source. A figure may be glimpsed near the door or just beyond the foot of the bed, standing motionless, watching before dissolving into darkness. These experiences are never sustained, always brief, leaving the mind uncertain of what was real. The rooms remain prepared as if for guests who will never arrive. Beds are made neatly, towels folded, furniture aligned. The spaces look normal, ordinary even, yet the atmosphere carries weight. The combination of scent, subtle movement, and unexplained contact creates a sense that the motel remembers all who have passed through, both present and missing. Morning brings relief but not release. Sunlight filters through curtained windows, softening shadows and dissipating some unease. Sounds of the highways return, birds begin their morning calls, and the motel appears ordinary once more. Yet the memories of brushes under beds, shadows in corners, and faint whispers linger in the minds of visitors. Crossroads Rest endures at the intersection of roads and reality. It is a place of arrivals and departures, of presence and absence, of memories held in walls, floors, and corners. It waits quietly, prepared for the next guest to pass through, carrying with them the lingering echoes of travelers who never returned, the faint scent of smoke, and the subtle reminders that some crossroads are more than they appear. The motel exists as both shelter and witness. Its halls are traveled by the living, but the past remains palpable. Each room tells the story of absence and observation. Of touch without presence. And of time at the edges of ordinary perception. Crossroads Rest watches as guests come and go, preserving its quiet, unsettling memory. In the still air and in the shifting shadows. Waiting for the next journey to intersect with its own. Shadow Creek Lodge sits at the edge of a dense forest, its wooden structure weathered by years of wind and rain. Behind the motel, a narrow creek winds through the trees, its water dark and restless. In daylight, the creek appears ordinary, reflecting the sky and surrounding foliage. But after sunset, something shifts. The surface seems to carry movement that does not belong to the water itself. Guests have reported seeing figures in the creek's reflection that are not present on the banks. Shapes rise briefly from the dark water, human in form, yet impossible to approach. They do not move like normal people. They remain still, staring, watching. When observers blink or turn away and back again, the figures vanish, leaving only the distorted surface of the creek. The air around Shadow Creek Lodge grows colder at night. Temperatures drop abruptly, unconnected to weather or elevation. Guests feel it immediately upon stepping outside, a sharp chill pressing against the skin. It carries a sensation of awareness, as if the cold itself observes and follows. Along with the sudden drop in temperature come whispers. Names are called softly, sometimes from just behind a tree, sometimes from the water itself. The sound is intimate and precise, echoing across the lodge grounds and corridors. Guests report turning to respond, only to find emptiness. Some visitors have described the creek's sounds as unnatural. Beyond the usual gurgle of flowing water, they hear tones that resemble murmurs or low calls. In moments of heightened fear, the water seems to pulse, moving faster and louder, almost as if it is responding to the presence of humans nearby. A few have described the sensation that the creek flows with blood, its sound heavy and wet, though no evidence appears when examined closely. Inside the lodge, the atmosphere mirrors the creek's disturbances. Hallways are quiet but carry weight. Floors creak underfoot, even when empty. Shadows move in corners, fleeting and untraceable. Guests report sensations of being watched, the feeling intensifying near windows overlooking the creek. Even when sitting in rooms with doors locked, the awareness of observation remains palpable. The reflection in the water is particularly unsettling. It does not always match reality. Trees may appear taller, shadows longer. Figures seem to echo moments from the past, glimpses of people who once stood near the creek, or perhaps never existed at all. It is difficult to tell if the vision is memory, imagination, or something else entirely. Visitors often note changes in perception. Steps to the creek feel longer than they should. Sounds from the forest appear closer or distorted. Objects seem slightly displaced when returning from a walk. The lodge becomes a space where ordinary measurements of distance, time, and orientation no longer fully apply. Whispers sometimes carry instructions, warnings, or invitations. Names are repeated with intimate precision, as if the voices know the identity of each guest. Few respond aloud. Most choose silence, moving carefully, aware that engagement seems to prolong the presence rather than dispel it. The creek itself never stops. Its current is constant, carrying debris and leaves, yet its surface remains reflective in ways that defy ordinary light. Moonlight glimmers across it, sometimes revealing figures for a fraction of a second before shadows reclaim the water. Guests report seeing shapes kneeling, sitting, or standing along the creek bed, impossible to approach and fading when focused on directly. Some visitors have attempted to capture the phenomena on camera or audio. Photographs show ripples and reflections that cannot be explained by natural water patterns. Recordings capture faint sounds indistinguishable from human breath, yet no one is present. Equipment fails intermittently, adding to the sense that the environment resists documentation. The lodge staff are familiar with the creek and its peculiarities. Some choose to ignore the advice, drawn by curiosity or disbelief, only to return shaken and unwilling to speak openly. Those who stay indoors report hearing the whispering carry through open windows. The cold pressing against the panes, the water gurgling insistently beneath the moonlight. Over time, patterns repeat. Figures appear at the same sections of the creek. The cold arrives at predictable intervals after sunset. Whispers follow the same rhythm, rising and fading with the wind. Guests notice the repetition, a ritual of presence that continues across nights, seasons, and years. Shadow Creek Lodge endures as a place where perception is altered and reality feels mutable. The creek behind the motel holds echoes of what was, what might be, and what is not fully understood. Guests experience the cold, the whispers, the reflections, and the sense of being watched, leaving with a memory that lingers long after departure. At night, the neon lights of the lodge reflect softly on the creek, blending with moonlight and shadows. The figures remain, the whispers continue, and the water flows relentlessly, carrying the unseen, the remembered, and the unknown. The lodge waits, the creek waits, and the phenomena persist, unbroken and persistent for every visitor who approaches after dark. Shadow Creek Lodge is a place where the ordinary ends, and the quiet presence of something beyond the visible takes hold, shaping perception, memory, and fear, one night at a time. The Eternal Night Motel sits on a quiet stretch of highway where darkness falls early and the air is still. From the outside, it appears ordinary. Rooms seem welcoming, and the parking lot is empty except for a few travelers seeking rest. Yet those who step inside quickly realize that the rules of time and perception do not behave as expected. Rooms appear normal at first glance. Beds are made neatly, tables hold standard amenities, and clocks hang on the walls marking the hours. Yet visitors soon notice subtle anomalies. Time slows. Clocks stop mid-tick or advance in irregular increments. Minutes stretch into hours with no clear pattern. Guests glance repeatedly at the clock, only to see it frozen or moving strangely. The effect on the body is immediate. Visitors feel disoriented, a dizziness that is not tied to movement. Standing, sitting, or lying down produces the same unsettling sensation. Balance seems off, and the room itself appears slightly distorted. The senses are heightened yet unreliable, producing a constant tension between what is seen and what is felt. Movement through the motel becomes strange. Hallways seem longer than they should be. Doors appear farther away after turning a corner, only to collapse back into expected locations when revisited. Sound behaves oddly, footsteps echoing inconsistently. Conversations with other guests may feel delayed, or replies may arrive before questions are fully spoken. Windows add another layer of unease. Guests report figures standing outside, watching silently. Their presence is fleeting and peripheral, only glimpsed from the corner of the eye. Sometimes a shadow lingers behind blinds, moving slightly as if breathing. Other times, faces appear briefly, expressionless and still, vanishing when approached. They do not gesture or communicate, yet their attention is palpable, creating an unshakable feeling of being observed. Guests describe sensations that are both physical and psychological. A room may feel warmer or colder than it should. Air pressure seems to shift, pressing gently against the chest or head. The mind struggles to reconcile the perception of stillness with subtle, inexplicable motion. Dizziness intensifies during these moments, leaving the body tense and the thoughts scattered. Time distortion grows stronger the longer one remains inside. Activities that would normally take minutes feel endless. Reading a page, walking across the room, even drinking water can stretch into moments that feel hours long. Attempts to track time with watches or phones often fail. Devices freeze, malfunction, or provide contradictory readings. Some guests notice repetition. Patterns of light, sound, and movement appear to loop. A humming air conditioner may repeat its cycle out of sync. Hallway lights flicker rhythmically in ways that do not match switches or circuits. These loops create a sensation that the motel is aware, guiding attention subtly while leaving a sense of unpredictability. Sleep does not provide relief. Guests awaken frequently, often to find figures at windows or shadows along the walls. Sounds of movement occur in empty rooms. Doors that were previously closed may now stand slightly ajar, yet no one is present. Attempts to leave the room are frequently met with disorientation, hallways appearing longer or different from memory. The motel's effect extends beyond the room. The parking lot and exterior areas sometimes feel slightly off, with distances exaggerated and shadows shifting unnaturally. Objects appear in different locations after brief absences, adding to the impression that space itself is manipulated. Those who attempt to record the phenomena encounter difficulties. Cameras produce blurry or distorted images. Audio equipment captures only static, faint echoes, or faint hums that cannot be traced. Observations cannot be reliably verified, reinforcing the subjective nature of the experience. Guests report that careful observation reduces the intensity of effects. Moving slowly, paying attention to surroundings, and avoiding sudden motion helps manage dizziness and perception distortions. Despite this, the feeling of being watched persists, constant and unavoidable. The inn's atmosphere is not overtly hostile. The experience is subtle, insidious, and immersive. Pressing on the senses and perception rather than the body directly. The motel exists as a space outside ordinary understanding of time, observation, and spatial consistency. When guests eventually depart, the effects linger. Memory of distorted time, dizziness, and shadows remains vivid. Days or hours spent within the motel are difficult to reconcile with the outside world. Perception of duration may remain inconsistent. And the sense of being observed can persist in quiet moments. The Eternal Night Motel continues to operate, its structure unchanged and its effects consistent. Guests come and go, many unaware of the unusual nature until after prolonged exposure. Hallways stretch and contract. Clocks stop and restart at irregular intervals. Shadows and figures appear silently at windows, and attention is drawn without action. The motel's influence is subtle yet undeniable, a continuous presence that shapes thought, awareness, and movement. Those who leave carry a lasting impression. The sensations of dizziness, distorted time, and being watched persist in memory. The motel, with its ordinary rooms and impossible temporal shifts, becomes something more than a building. It is an environment that challenges perception, blurs reality, and leaves a lasting imprint on all who spend time within its walls. Eternal Night Motel remains on the quiet highway, illuminated by flickering lights. Travelers stop for rest or curiosity, unaware of the subtle manipulations of time, space, and observation that await. Inside, clocks stall, hallways stretch, and shadows linger, calling attention to the uncanny, creating a place where the ordinary is never entirely certain. And every guest becomes aware of the passage of time as something fluid and watched. Cursed Horizon Motel sits atop a lonely hill, its FAA Section A catching the last rays of sunset and disappearing into shadow as night falls. From the hilltop, the highway stretches below, empty for miles, and the surrounding fields are dark, broken only by occasional trees. By day, the building appears ordinary. Guests check in. Cars line the lot. Neon lights flicker gently, promising warmth and rest. Yet even in daylight, the motel carries a presence that feels older than the paint and brick suggest. As night deepens, the horizon begins to distort. The landscape seems to bend and stretch at angles that should be impossible. Lines of the road appear to curve unnaturally. Distant trees shift subtly in position when observed through the corner of the eye. Figures appear in the parking lot. They are faint at first, shadows moving among the cars. Some seem humanoid, walking slowly along the edges of light cast by the neon signs. Others are blurred, indistinct, almost transparent. When approached directly, they vanish instantly. No footprints, no sound, no trace of where they stood. The effect is unsettling. Guests describe a sensation of being watched long before noticing movement. The eyes may not exist physically, yet awareness seems constant, tracking them across the lot and along the paths to the rooms. The quiet hum of distant traffic and wind is interrupted by sudden, inexplicable moments of silence, as if the hill itself is holding its breath. Inside the motel, the atmosphere thickens. Corridors stretch longer than expected. Doors appear slightly shifted when revisited. Floorboards creak in patterns that do not align with the number of occupants. Lights flicker sporadically, casting shadows that do not match the shapes of furniture or walls. The rooms themselves feel compressed and open at the same time, a paradox that unsettles perception. Visitors often experience disorientation at night. Time seems to move inconsistently. Seconds stretch into minutes. Steps taken along the hallways feel longer than the distance would allow. Some hear soft scraping or the faint shuffle of movement in adjacent rooms. A few leave in terror. They awaken in the dark hours and find themselves gripped by fear they cannot explain. Screams pierce the silence. The staff arrive to calm them, but the guests' recollection of what caused their panic is vague, fragmented, almost dreamlike. Sometimes, they cannot recall their own movements, only the sensation of being touched or watched. The parking lot and hill are the epicenter of strange occurrences. Shadows shift along the edge of trees and cars. A figure may appear near a vehicle, then vanish when glanced at directly. Observers note movement in areas too distant for any ordinary person to reach quickly. The horizon seems to bend around these events, creating visual illusions that confuse memory and perception. Even the staff acknowledge the oddities. Long-time employees maintain routines and provide standard hospitality, yet they warn new guests about staying outside late or lingering in the parking lot. Stories circulate quietly of guests who disappeared briefly, returned pale and shaken, or refused to enter certain rooms after dark. The warnings are seldom elaborated, leaving much to imagination. The hill amplifies every sensation. Wind carries sound unevenly, footsteps echo where none exist. The neon signs hum faintly, yet sometimes the vibration resonates in rooms with no explanation. Shadows move against the natural angles of light, and the lines of the motel appear to shift when not being observed directly. Guests attempting to document phenomena encounter limitations. Cameras record only what is possible for the eye to see, yet witnesses insist on movement and shapes that never appear on playback. Audio devices pick up faint anomalies, low frequencies, clicks, or soft rhythmic patterns that cannot be attributed to mechanical sources. Measurements of temperature or light sometimes fluctuate inexplicably, reinforcing the feeling that the environment is aware. Despite fear, the motel remains occupied. Travelers arrive seeking rest, unaware of the history, or drawn by curiosity. Some sleep without incident. Others awaken with sensations of pressure on the body, faint scratches on skin, or a feeling of being observed from corners of the room. The intensity varies, but the consistency of reports suggests more than coincidence. The horizon itself is part of the phenomenon. From the hilltop, the landscape stretches and contracts in ways that do not match reality. Roads appear to curve suddenly, distances feel altered. Figures sometimes seem to walk along the edge of the hill, disappearing instantly when approached. The motel functions like any other by day. It offers rooms, amenities, and lodging. The hill appears ordinary, the horizon straight, and the parking lot calm. But night reveals layers beyond perception. Shadows, figures, and distortions persist, interacting subtly with every presence in the building and on the hill. Cursed Horizon Motel endures as a place between reality and perception. Its rooms provide rest, yet its hilltop presence monitors, shifts, and influences. Visitors leave changed, carrying impressions that cannot be fully articulated. Screams, vanished figures, scratches, and visual distortions linger in memory long after departure. The hill continues to rise, the horizon to bend. The parking lot remains quiet until darkness falls. Then, the motel awakens to the night. Watching travelers. Shaping perception. And leaving traces that cannot be explained. But can always be felt. The parking lot remains quiet. Blackwater rests at the edge of a dark, still pond, its weathered walls reflecting faintly on the water at dusk. During the day, the inn seems unremarkable, a place of quiet lodging, wooden beams, and narrow corridors. By night, however, the pond transforms the surrounding space, its surface becoming a mirror that does not always reflect what exists. Guests who pause at the edge report images appearing in the water, shapes and movements that have no physical source. Shapes and movements that have no physical source. The reflections are subtle at first, ripples suggesting motion when the wind is calm. Then, a faint figure appears. Sometimes it is a shadow, indistinct and shifting. Other times, it is clearer, a human outline that mirrors a posture, a glance, a presence that should not be there. Those who witness it feel a chill, a sudden awareness of eyes looking back from the water. Inside the inn, sounds amplify the unease. Guests in rooms above the pond sometimes hear splashing, soft and rhythmic, though the water below is still. At first, people attribute it to plumbing or settling boards. Then they notice a pattern that defies explanation. Some describe faces forming within the reflections, mouths open as if screaming silently. The images vanish when looked at directly, leaving the pond smooth and unchanged. Guests feel the presence as acutely as if someone stood beside them. The impression lingers long after the water appears ordinary again. The inn itself is old. Its timbers creak naturally, and corridors wind unpredictably. Doors close slowly, windows rattle in minor drafts. Yet these familiar sounds are only part of the story. The pond, silent and dark, contains another rhythm entirely, one that interacts with the building and its occupants, unmeasured and unrecorded. Staff are aware of the reports. They move through the inn with practiced calm, noting reactions without judgment. Housekeeping avoids lingering near windows facing the pond late at night. Managers politely steer guests away from lingering on the deck. They offer reassurance, yet acknowledge privately that some rooms, particularly those above the water, are more prone to these occurrences. Visitors describe sensations beyond sight and sound. A sudden tension behind the eyes, a feeling of weight pressing on the chest, a sense of awareness not tied to a visible source. The longer one remains near the pond, the stronger the impression of being observed. Footsteps feel measured, deliberate, though no one moves nearby. The air itself seems thick with attention, as though the inn and pond are attuned to each visitor. Attempts to document the phenomenon yield incomplete results. Cameras capture ripples, reflections, and ordinary movement, but nothing conclusive. Audio recordings pick up only ambient sound. Yet those present insist the experiences are undeniable. Memory of the images, the faces, and the unseen movement lingers with a clarity that defies recording. The faces in the reflections are not threatening in motion, yet the expression carries urgency. Open mouths, eyes wide, silent screams that seem to convey warning or entreaty. Guests report freezing, unable to look away, feeling an instinctive need to leave the area. Some step back quickly, some linger despite fear, compelled to watch the water. Some report a sense of impending doom and madness. At times, the pond appears ordinary, calm and reflective. Trees and stars mirror themselves perfectly, the inn's outline crisp along the shore. Yet the faintest movement in peripheral vision can transform the familiar into something other, a presence that appears only to those observing carefully, or those sensitive to the peculiar rhythm of the inn and water. The architecture of Blackwater Inn amplifies the effect. Windows facing the pond catch faint light differently at night. Hallways create echoes that carry distant sounds with clarity. Floors transmit subtle vibrations. All combining to enhance the impression that the building and the water are engaged in a shared consciousness. Guests feel small within the space, caught between what is seen, heard, and imagined. Reactions vary. Some report unease so profound that sleep becomes impossible. Others remain fascinated, compelled to observe and return the following evening. Conversations among guests acknowledge the occurrences quietly, sharing details without challenging one another's perceptions. The pond has a way of leaving witnesses both unsettled and curious, a blend that ensures the story persists. Even when no face or figure appears, the anticipation of its presence shapes perception. Guests approach the windows slowly, listen for splashes, and feel the unseen weight of the water. Guests listen for splashes, and feel the unseen weight of the water. The subtle tension in the floor, the faint changes in light all combine to create an immersive experience unique to Blackwater Inn. The subtle tension in the floor, the faint changes in light all combine to create an immersive experience unique to Blackwater Inn. The subtle tension in the floor, the faint changes in light all combine to create an immersive experience unique to Blackwater Inn. All combine to create an immersive experience unique to Blackwater Inn. The inn endures, offering shelter and hospitality while preserving its mysteries. Rooms above the pond are carefully assigned. Guests are guided toward safe observation points. The pond remains dark and still during the day, ordinary in appearance. But at night it holds its secrets, reflecting images that exist only in a liminal space, between reality and perception. Blackwater Inn is not merely a building. Where time is slowed, and where observers encounter a presence both tangible and elusive. The pond, the reflections, the unseen splashes, and the silent faces combine to form an experience that cannot be fully explained. Visitors leave carrying the memory of the water and the faces within it. The impression of being watched, the echoes of splashing, and the silent warnings linger long after departure. Blackwater Inn continues to operate, steadfast on its shore, bridging the ordinary world and the strange reflections that lie within the depths of its pond, waiting for those willing to witness. Fogspire Motel sits at the edge of a quiet highway, a low building shrouded in ever-present mist. By day, the fog lifts slightly, revealing weathered siding, a cracked parking lot, and a small neon sign that flickers intermittently. Travelers check in and find the motel unremarkable, ordinary in every sense. Yet as dusk falls, the landscape begins to change. Almost every night, the fog returns. It creeps along the ground, wrapping itself around corners and vehicles. It rises slowly, obscuring the edges of the building and swallowing the trees along the perimeter. From a distance, the motel seems to vanish entirely, leaving only a pale haze hovering over the highway. The air thickens with moisture, and visibility shrinks until the world feels narrow to a few feet around each person. Inside, the atmosphere grows heavier. Rooms retain the faint scent of damp wood and old fabric. The chill of the fog outside seeps through walls and windows, settling in corners. Guests report a sense of displacement, as though the walls have shifted slightly closer or the floor has elongated. The air carries the weight of anticipation, subtle and persistent. Whispers begin to echo through the rooms. Voices speak in languages that cannot be understood. Sometimes they seem to come from the bathroom. Sometimes from beneath the bed. Sometimes from the hallway outside. They do not form sentences that are intelligible. Yet the tone conveys intent, as if someone is communicating beyond human comprehension. Doors behave unpredictably. Some rooms are found locked from the inside when no one has entered. Handles turn on their own, latches click shut. And even windows appear to seal themselves. Guests discover these anomalies without explanation. And the phenomenon repeats in different rooms, creating a sense that the building itself is aware of occupancy. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the floors. Hallway lights flicker sporadically, casting long, shifting forms. Objects appear slightly moved from their original positions. A book placed at a new angle. The fog extends its influence to sound. Footsteps echo along empty corridors with no source. Floorboards creak under invisible weight. Guests describe sensations of being watched. Shifts in peripheral vision suggest figures lingering just out of focus. Curtains sway where no breeze enters. Reflections in mirrors sometimes show movement behind the observer, only to vanish when turned to directly. The perception of observation lingers, untraceable yet undeniable. The motel retains the appearance of normalcy. Beds are neatly made, towels folded, and furniture arranged with care. Windows allow glimpses of the mist outside. Yet no one can see what might be moving within it. Objects remain largely in place. But the subtle signs of interaction hint that the motel itself preserves memory of all who pass through. The fog amplifies time differently. Minutes stretch and compress. Clocks may appear to stall, only to jump forward unexpectedly. Guests report that a short walk down the hallway feels longer than the corridor actually measures. The fog slows perception and heightens awareness, blending past, present, and anticipation into a single, disorienting experience. Voices carry rhythm, pattern, and volume, sometimes rising to a low crescendo, then tapering into silence. The effect is hypnotic, pulling attention to areas of the room or hall that remain empty. The combination of sound, shadow, and sensation creates the impression of life where none should exist. Some visitors attempt to leave the fog behind. Even when stepping outside, the haze clings to clothing and skin, making the world beyond the motel feel muted and distorted. Trees and roadside markers appear closer, then farther, as if the fog is reshaping perspective. Vehicles moving along the highway seem to pass silently, their headlights swallowed by the mist. The phenomenon is persistent, nightly. Fog Spire Motel does not require belief. The mist returns with dusk, the whispers rise, and doors lock themselves. Each night repeats the same pattern, allowing travelers to experience a world that intersects the ordinary with the inexplicable. Morning brings clarity, but not resolution. The fog dissipates, sounds fade, and doors function normally. Guests leaving the motel see the building as it appears in daylight, mundane, solid, and familiar. Yet the memory of whispers, locked doors, and shifting shadows lingers, marking a quiet awareness that something persists beyond perception. Fog Spire Motel exists between reality and illusion. It is a place where fog conceals and reveals simultaneously, where time behaves irregularly, and where the building itself seems conscious of its occupants. Shadows, whispers, and subtle movement create an atmosphere that is both mesmerizing and unsettling. The motel waits quietly for the next guest. Lights hum, hallways stretch into shadow, and rooms remain prepared. The fog will return, the whispers will rise. And the subtle sense of being observed will persist, ensuring that every night at Fog Spire is a passage into a space where the ordinary meets the mysterious, and where perception itself becomes part of the experience. The Rustwood Motel stands at the edge of an abandoned stretch of highway, its exterior weathered and faded. The paint peels in long strips, and the asphalt of the parking lot cracks beneath encroaching weeds. The neon sign flickers intermittently, casting a dull amber glow that reaches only partway across the empty lot. At first glance, the building seems ordinary, yet visitors quickly sense an unusual weight, a presence that settles over corridors and rooms. Inside, the hallways are silent, yet they creak as though underfoot. The sound is irregular, echoing through the empty wings. Guests have reported hearing steps pacing above them when no one is walking, the floors shifting and groaning in response to unseen weight. The effect is disorienting, making the corridors feel longer than they should, stretching into shadowed distances. Abandoned wings of the motel hold a particular notoriety. Visitors who wander these areas often describe pale figures moving slowly along the walls. They never respond when approached, yet the sensation of being watched grows heavier with every step. Rooms that are supposed to be empty produce sounds that defy explanation. Metallic clanging resonates from behind closed doors, sharp and deliberate. Keys rattle in locks. Drawers slam shut without force. Some visitors have stepped into rooms to investigate, only to find them empty and perfectly orderly, the air thick with the residue of disturbance but devoid of occupants. The atmosphere within Rustwood Motel is oppressive yet subtle. It does not overwhelm at first. Instead, it settles gradually, manifesting in small, unsettling sensations. Cold drafts appear in otherwise still hallways. Shadows pool in corners longer than they should. Lights flicker, dimming briefly before returning to full brightness. The building itself seems aware of those moving through it, adjusting subtly to presence and attention. Time behaves differently here. Clocks tick inconsistently, sometimes accelerating, sometimes slowing. Visitors report arriving at doors they had seen moments ago, only to find hours have passed. The sensation is disorienting, a displacement of ordinary perception that grows stronger in the abandoned wings. The creaking corridors are not always accompanied by visible figures. Often, the sound appears alone, echoing down halls lined with doors that open onto vacant rooms. Footsteps ascend and descend staircases without origin. The auditory disturbances are detailed, spatially precise, as if an invisible guest moves purposefully through the motel, testing boundaries and following rhythms invisible to the eye. Pale figures sometimes appear in clusters, as though reenacting patterns of movement from the motel's past. They pause at thresholds, hesitate by windows, then dissolve into shadows. Observers describe the sensation of warmth leaving the room when figures appear, a chill that settles along the spine. The figurisa movements are deliberate yet repetitive, reinforcing the impression that the motel itself is replaying memories rather than interacting directly. Guests who witness the phenomena often experience heightened sensory perception. Sounds become amplified, shadows more distinct. Breathing feels heavier in the hallways, though the air remains still. Some hear whispered words just beyond comprehension, as though echoes of past occupants linger in the corners. Light behaves unusually, reflections shifting across floors and walls, producing shapes that disappear when focused on directly. Attempts to record the activity have often failed. Cameras malfunction, audio devices pick up static, and reflections in mirrors appear distorted. Those who attempt to document encounters describe equipment failing precisely during moments of strongest activity. It is as though the motel resists being captured, maintaining the boundary between observation and experience. Staff at Rustwood are aware of the reports but offer few explanations. Long-term employees avoid the abandoned wings after dark, warning guests to refrain from wandering into empty corridors alone. Their silence reinforces the air of mystery, suggesting knowledge of patterns and histories that are not shared. Despite these disturbances, the motel continues to operate. Guests check in and out, rooms are cleaned. And the neon sign still flickers nightly. By day, the building appears ordinary. The hallway sounds, figures, and metallic clangs absent or unnoticed. Yet at night, the motel transforms. Revealing layers of history embedded within walls, floors, and ceilings. A persistent echo of events that cannot be fully explained. Visitors leave Rustwood carrying memories of creaking corridors, pale figures, and the metallic clanging of empty rooms. The experience lingers long after departure, creating a sense that the building itself remains present, observing, and subtly interacting. The motel endures, a space where perception is tested, presence is questioned, and the ordinary is suspended in favor of something quietly unsettling. Rustwood Motel stands as a testament to persistence beyond occupancy. Its hallways echo with unseen footsteps, abandoned wings house figures that defy solid form, and rooms retain the residue of activity even in absence. Those who enter find themselves navigating a place alive with memory, shadow, and sound, where the line between the observed and the observer blurs. At night, the neon sign flickers. The corridors creak. Figures pace silently, metallic clangs resonate from empty rooms, and the building watches, patiently, eternally, waiting for the next visitor to cross thresholds that never fully belong to the living. The Silver Moon Motel sits on a quiet stretch of road where the desert meets the night. By day, it appears ordinary. Walls painted a soft cream, windows reflecting sunlight, and balconies lined neatly with chairs. Yet as evening falls and the moon rises, the motel changes. Moonlight cuts through the windows in sharp angles, casting long, strange shapes across floors and walls. Shapes that twist and stretch in ways that seem almost deliberate. Guests arriving after dark often notice the shift immediately. Shadows deepen and multiply, moving with the light as if they have their own awareness. The moonlight illuminates corners that should be empty, drawing attention to details that go unnoticed during daylight hours. The atmosphere thickens, and the familiar comfort of a room gives way to unease. Figures sometimes appear on the balconies. Guests report seeing silhouettes, standing still, watching. Their features are vague, obscured by shadow and distance. Yet the sense of attention is unmistakable. Eyes seem fixed on the rooms below. Observing quietly without motion or sound. It is the intensity of being watched that unsettles most. Not any overt threat. Inside, rooms maintain their ordinary appearance. Beds are made neatly, furniture remains in place, and nothing seems out of order. Yet subtle disturbances begin to manifest. Doors slam unexpectedly, sometimes during the night, startling guests from sleep. Drawers or personal items shift without explanation, moving across tables or floors in ways that suggest intent. The combination of shadows, figures, and movement creates a disorienting experience. Guests describe heightened awareness, their senses focusing sharply on every detail. Sounds become amplified. Each small stimulus is magnified by the sense of observation. Hallways feel longer at night. Light from room lamps reflects oddly, elongating walls and doors. Corners seem to bend slightly, producing a subtle sensation of imbalance. The ordinary layout of the motel becomes unfamiliar, creating a sense of being guided or redirected without conscious effort. Moonlight enhances the perception of activity. Shadows move independently of known objects. A curtain flutters though no breeze exists. A chair may tilt slightly, suggesting weight where there is none. Guests describe moments where their eyes are drawn to spaces they cannot explain, as if the motel itself is inviting them to notice. Sounds interact strangely with the environment. Footsteps echo when no one is present. Guests walking lightly may hear multiple steps following in time, then fading when attention turns. Doors that are closed may produce thuds from within. Objects seem to respond to presence, moving subtly when observed, still when ignored. Guests often find that careful, deliberate observation reduces the intensity of unsettling sensations. Sleep is difficult for many. The combination of watching figures, shifting objects, and unpredictable sounds produces restlessness. Dreams are often vivid, echoing elements from the rooms or balconies. Guests awaken disoriented, unsure of whether movement was real or imagined. Shadows may linger even after waking, stretching across floors in moonlit angles that seem impossible. The balconies remain a focal point. Figures are rarely detailed. Their forms suggest presence without specific identity. Observation is enough to create tension, yet the figures never approach. Their stillness is more compelling than motion, emphasizing the sense of attention over action. Guests report that the effects are stronger during nights when the moon is full or high in the sky. Shadows become sharper, the figures more distinct, and the movement of objects more pronounced. During overcast nights, experiences are subtler, yet the sense of awareness persists, an underlying pressure in the environment. Attempts to document the phenomena with cameras or audio equipment often fail. Images blur, shadows stretch beyond recording, and sounds are captured incompletely. Even precise observations are difficult to verify, reinforcing the impression that perception itself is part of the experience. The Silver Moon Motel continues its nightly rhythm. During daylight, it appears ordinary, offering rooms and hospitality to travelers. At night, the combination of moonlight, shadows, and observation transforms the space into something that challenges understanding, bending perception and heightening awareness. Guests who leave carry memories of shadows, figures, and shifting objects. The sensations linger long after departure. Hallways, balconies, and moonlit windows remain vivid in recollection, shaping expectations and awareness of light and shadow in future environments. Where moonlight animates shapes and observation itself becomes tangible, creating an experience that is immersive, subtle, and persistent. Moonlight continues to cast strange shapes through windows, as figures appear silently on balconies, quietly reinforcing the sense that the space is aware, observing, and responsive. Visitors continue to arrive, drawn by the ordinary by day, and the extraordinary by night. The motel maintains its rhythms, guiding perception and attention, creating an environment where light, shadow, and observation converge, leaving each guest aware that the space is far more than a simple place to rest. Dead End Lodge sits at the edge of a dense forest, where the trees crowd close and the road narrows into a single lane of cracked asphalt. By day, the motel appears ordinary. Cars pull into the gravel lot. Lights hang from the eaves. Guests check in and move toward rooms with routine expectations. Yet even in sunlight, the air carries a weight, as if the forest itself leans inward to observe each arrival. The name feels fitting. Visitors sense an unnatural finality, a threshold beyond which movement seems constrained. The forest encroaches, shadowed and dense. Paths wind toward the lodge, but beyond the lot, the trees close quickly, swallowing light and sound. There is no throughway, no exit but the road that brought travelers there. As night falls, the atmosphere intensifies. Lights in the parking lot glow faintly, illuminating gravel and trunks, yet shadows stretch unnaturally. The forest hums quietly, a subtle vibration beneath the ordinary sounds of wind or distant wildlife. Guests report a sensation of presence, something at the edge of vision, moving but not advancing, watching yet unidentifiable. Shadows follow guests even when the lights are on. Walking from car to room, they feel shapes trailing just beyond the circle of illumination. Turning abruptly reveals nothing. Moving faster produces no departure of the shadows. Shadows seem bound to the individual, maintaining distance but persistent in observation. Inside the rooms, the forest presses through windows. The trees appear to bend toward the building. Curtains shift despite closed windows. Air feels heavier, carrying a sense of attention. Guests notice subtle changes in furniture placement or small disturbances in belongings, though nothing suggests human interference. The lodge itself seems to respond to presence, alive in ways not immediately visible. Carpeting muffles footsteps, yet distant creaks echo unnaturally, synchronized with movement elsewhere. Light flickers intermittently, casting elongated shadows along walls and corners. Guests walking alone feel a pattern in the sounds, as if someone or something is pacing parallel to them, invisible but deliberate. The forest surrounding the lodge contributes to isolation. Wind carries noise oddly, sound bouncing off trunks and foliage. Darkness deepens quickly, swallowing peripheral vision. The road leading in disappears from sight, leaving the motel, the lot, and the forest in a cocoon of observation. Visitors describe an acute awareness of the trees themselves, as if each branch leans toward them with subtle intent. Some report more direct phenomena. Shapes appear at windows, standing motionless. Vanishing when approached. Reflections in mirrors catch movement that does not align with physical presence. The air grows colder in sudden patches, carrying the faint scent of damp leaves, soil, and wood. Even with lights on, the sensation of being watched does not dissipate. Sleep is restless at Dead End Lodge. Guests awaken to the feeling of a weight pressing lightly on shoulders or legs. Light movements along bed covers, faint taps against furniture. Objects are not moved entirely, but subtly shifted. Scratches may appear on arms or hands without clear cause, shallow and unexplained, enough to startle without harm. Dreams are vivid, echoing shadows from the corridors or trees outside. The staff are aware. They maintain professional composure, offering standard services while subtly discouraging nighttime exploration outside rooms. Longtime employees report having sensed the loggia's peculiar qualities for years, recognizing when guests experience heightened awareness or moments of unease. Visitors note distortions in perception. Time feels stretched. Steps in corridors seem longer than the distance would allow. Shadows appear in angles inconsistent with the lighting. Sound arrives slightly delayed or early, disorienting the sense of space. The lodge seems to expand and contract depending on observation, altering awareness without visible cause. The forest interacts with the building subtly. Branches press against windows, leaves brush walls, even in calm windless nights. Even in calm windless nights. The lodge responds with echoes in flooring and paneling. Guests perceive movement synchronized between inside and outside, a quiet dialogue that is never verbal but fully sensed. Some leave terrified. They wake, feel weight or touch, see shadows that vanish instantly, and depart abruptly. Screams may carry into the night, though no one witnesses the cause directly. The empty rooms remain orderly, yet the echoes linger for those who have passed through, impressions of presence that cannot be erased. Others endure the night. They awaken shaken but unharmed, noting sensations, glimpses, or disturbances. Their recollection is vivid yet incomplete, leaving questions about what is real, what is perception, and what belongs to the lodge itself. Dead-end lodge functions, yet it is more than a motel. It offers beds, food, and shelter, but it also holds attention. Its halls, rooms, and parking lot maintain a quiet observation. The forest presses in constantly. Shadows track guests. Corridors echo with unseen pacing. The lodge exists simultaneously as refuge and observer, familiar and alien. Stories of the lodge, of shadows, of the surrounding forest, are shared quietly. Guests describe patterns, sensations, and marks that recur across different visitors and nights. The experiences vary in intensity, but the consistency suggests more than imagination alone. Dead End Lodge endures as a place between ordinary and uncanny. Its rooms provide warmth, its corridors lead to rest, yet the forest and building interact with every presence. Shadows follow, sensations persist, and perception is altered. Visitors leave carrying impressions, memories, and unease, a reminder that the motel is never entirely empty and never truly silent. The highway stretches on, yet the lodge watches. The forest leans in. The shadows move. And guests remain aware, however briefly, that dead-end lodge is a place that observes, responds, and exists in a state apart from ordinary time, where presence itself is noted and remembered. Crimson Sky Inn sits on a ridge overlooking rolling hills, its facade catching the light of the horizon as the sun dips low each evening. By day, the building appears inviting, painted in muted tones, with a parking lot lined neatly and windows reflecting calm skies. Travelers arrive expecting comfort, quiet, and the ordinary rhythm of check-in and departure. But at sunset, everything changes. The sky above the inn turns unnaturally bright. Sunsets bleed red across the horizon in ways that seem excessive, almost impossible. The color saturates the parking lot, the trees, the sides of the building, casting shadows that stretch and twist with a strange vitality. Guests describe feeling the color press against them, vivid and pervasive, as if the air itself has taken on the intensity of the sky. Figures sometimes appear in the parking lot. They are human-shaped, indistinct in detail, and remain perfectly still. Drivers returning to their vehicles report glimpsing silhouettes between cars. Passengers exiting the lobby notice them near light poles or beneath trees. The figures do not move when approached, do not react to headlights or footsteps. They simply occupy the space, observed but intangible. Inside the inn, the sense of unease extends further. Guests who have just checked in occasionally discover drawings in their rooms. The sketches are precise, depicting their faces exactly as they appeared when entering. Eyes, expressions, featuresa all rendered with care. Some find them on notepads, others on paper tucked under pillows. The origin is unknown. Staff deny any involvement, insisting no records or supplies could account for such occurrences. Yet the images are always there, personal, immediate, and impossible to dismiss. The combination of the crimson sky, the stationary figures, and the drawings creates a cumulative effect. Guests describe tension in their limbs, a pressing awareness of being observed from both the visible and invisible. Even those accustomed to travel report difficulty focusing, an uneasy alertness to every movement, every shadow. The inn itself becomes a frame for perception, its hallways and rooms alive with subtle cues that something beyond the ordinary is present. Staff are cautious in their explanations. Maintenance and housekeeping follow protocols meticulously, yet some rooms are approached with care after sunset. Housekeepers occasionally report feelings of being watched, glimpses of movement at the edges of vision, and lights flickering without cause. They describe a rhythm to the phenomena, a pattern that seems tied to the reddening of the sky. Guests are affected in varying ways. Some feel a heightened awareness of the landscape, noticing details in the parking lot and the surrounding hills that they had not observed earlier. Others experience a weight pressing behind their eyes or a tightness across the chest. Sensations fluctuate with proximity to the windows, the balcony, or rooms facing the horizon. Even the simplest actions feel charged with intensity. Walking across the lot, turning a key in the door, or standing by a window becomes an experience layered with tension. Shadows stretch and lean differently under the red glow. Reflections in glass behave strangely. And the figures remain perfectly still, a reminder that ordinary observation cannot account for everything. Visitors who encounter the drawings describe the effect as disorienting. Some keep them as evidence, others hide or discard them, but the memory lingers. Combined with the crimson sky and the unmoving figures outside, it reinforces a sense that the inn exists partially beyond normal understanding. The sun sinks lower, and the red hue intensifies, casting the landscape in unnatural light. Figures sometimes appear in new positions without having moved. Guests report a heightened sensitivity to sound, footsteps echo where none exist, leaves rustle more distinctly, and doors creak without apparent cause. The inn continues to operate seamlessly during the day, offering hospitality and accommodation without incident. Check-ins, housekeeping, and service follow normal routines. Only during the late afternoon and evening, as the crimson sky emerges, do the unusual events manifest. The timing is consistent, the intensity pronounced, and the combination of phenomena unmistakable to those present. Those who leave crimson sky and carry the memory with them. The vivid red sunsets. The figures that never move. The drawings of their faceta. Each element remains in the mind with a clarity that ordinary images cannot replicate. Even when distance restores ordinary perception, recollection brings the sky, the lot, and the rooms vividly back. The inn endures, offering comfort and lodging, yet it preserves its mysteries with care. Travelers return, drawn by reputation or curiosity. And the cycle continues. Sunsets bleed red. Figures watch silently. And drawings appear where least expected. Crimson Sky Inn exists at the intersection of perception and presence. A place where the ordinary rhythm of travel meets the persistent reminder that the world is never fully understood. Guests learn quickly to move with awareness, to note subtle cues, and to respect the rhythms of the inn. Shadows, reflections, and the glow of the horizon become elements of observation rather than distraction. Every evening, the inn reasserts its unique character, blending the tangible and intangible, the witnessed and the unseen. Crimson Sky Inn remains a destination for those willing to encounter it fully, a space where reality and impression coexist. The figures remind the observer, and the drawings record the visit. In this place, memory, perception, and experience intertwine, leaving a lasting impression long after the journey ends. Phantom Road Motel sits alone along an abandoned highway, where asphalt cracks and weeds push through the center line. A few travelers pass through, some curious, some seeking shelter for the night, unaware that the place carries a history that refuses to rest. The motel feels different after dark. Shadows stretch across the parking lot, thickened by the glow of dim lights. The building seems larger, corridors extending farther than they should. Windows glint faintly, catching headlights or moonlight, giving the impression that someone watches from every room. Visitors report being observed. From the moment they pull into the lot, there is a sense of eyes on them. Reflections in glass show movements that do not belong to anyone in the room. Curtains shift subtly, and the faintest silhouettes appear at windows, standing still, yet never moving when approached. Inside, the hallways echo unnaturally. Footsteps carry farther than expected, bouncing along walls and floors in patterns that do not match the number of people present. The sound of movement seems to follow travelers from room to room, always just behind, never overtly threatening but impossible to ignore. Some guests have tried to leave. They step into the parking lot and feel the sensation continue. Footsteps track them across pavement. Tires crunch over gravel. When they glance back toward the building, shadows stretch and twist along walls, keeping pace. Occasionally, visitors never reach the road, disappearing before they can exit the lot. Rooms themselves hold memory. Beds remain neatly made, chairs aligned, and tables cleared, yet the air carries the weight of presences that are not visible. Windows fog slightly as if breathed upon, though the air is still. Lights dim and brighten in ways that seem to correspond with attention from unseen watchers. Sounds are layered and persistent. Floorboards creak in empty corridors. Doors open gently, close without wind. Low murmurs drift along hallways, a whisper of conversation that is never coherent, spoken in a tongue not understood. Even the faint jingle of a key can seem to echo across the building long after it is gone. The exterior reinforces unease. Weeds sway where no wind moves. Trees near the edges of the lot stretch shadows that seem to bend toward the building. Moonlight catches the corners of windows, turning faint reflections into what appear to be figures observing from the inside. Visitors notice a distortion of time. Minutes stretch. A quick glance at a watch or phone can feel like hours have passed. Shadows appear to move differently than the passage of light would dictate. The longer someone remains in the motel, the more certain they become that the building is alive in its own rhythm, independent of those inside. Some attempt to explore fully. They walk each corridor, check every door, and look behind every window. A glance to a hallway corner may reveal nothing, but the sense of observation persists, like the motel itself is aware of every motion. The parking lot is never empty in perception. Even when the lot holds only a single car, travelers feel multiple presences, unseen but heavy in proximity. Footsteps echo alongside vehicles. Shadows move just beyond direct vision. Every exit feels delayed, every step toward the road weighted by something unseen. Those who have stayed describe a final moment of awareness. As they approach their cars, the footsteps grow slightly louder, closer, synchronized with their pace. A glance backward may reveal nothing, yet instinct compels faster movement. The highway beyond appears distant, elongated, as if the road itself resists connection to the motel. Morning light offers partial relief. Shadows shrink, windows lose their reflections, and the weight of observation fades. Footsteps and whispers vanish, though the memory lingers in the minds of those who spent the night. The building looks ordinary again, faded and quiet, unremarkable to casual travelers. Yet Phantom Road Motel waits. Its hallways, rooms, and windows preserve echoes of the night. Footsteps linger in memory, whispers repeat in recollection. And shadows return when the sun sets. Every night, the building resumes its pattern, observing arrivals, tracking movement, and altering perception. It is ordinary by day, unsettling by night, and impossible to fully understand. Time, sound, and space are warped, creating an environment where observation is continuous. And the line between real and perceived blurs. Phantom Road Motel endures as a final waypoint. Travelers arrive, aware or unaware, and leave marked by the impression of eyes that follow. And footsteps that echo, and a sense that the road beyond is not entirely reachable. It is a place of observation, memory, and subtle influence. Where the ordinary act of crossing a highway becomes a journey into an environment that watches, remembers, and waits. Thank you for joining me on this dark journey through haunted roadside motels tonight. These motels are more than stops along the highway. They are intersections of fear, tragedy, and the unexplained. Some visitors leave terrified. Some vanish forever. And some carry the memories of what they saw long after the neon lights fade behind them. If you ever find yourself checking into a motel at midnight, pay attention to the floors, the shadows, and the silence between rooms. It may not just be the wind. It may be something waiting. Would you dare spend a night at one of these haunted motels? Or would you turn away while you still could? Rest well, my friend. Until our next haunted journey.